Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. We are continuing the conversations with the candidate. I am your lovely host, Waukesha Howe, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Sharia and Miss Jessica Johnson. We finna get ready to have a conversation. It is Sunday here, sunny Sunday in Atlanta. And we are at the 5 o'clock hour. So let me just say this too. We're not bought and paid for by nobody. These are just mom, community members having a conversation with the candidates. So you can be aware when you go to the poll who is who and should I vote for? So to kick it off, we got Miss Jessica Johnson. Hey, lady.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you all, first of all, for putting this together and being awesome parent advocates. And thank you for inviting me to just share.
Yes. So listen, I got a good little icebreaker for you. So get ready. Let me
All
find
right.
where did you go? Okay, there you go. What did you have to give up to achieve your current level of success?
Wow. So I think, I was a communications major. I thought I was going to be the next Oprah in the field. And so the work for young people just kept calling my name, third generation educator. I got all the degrees to go in a different direction that I possibly could. And this work found me. And so, but I'm grateful. I'm so, so, so grateful that I have been on this path to connect low income and first generation students to money to pay for college, and now to really have this opportunity on a district level to make sure that all of our students have a realistic pathway to college or career.
Well, thank you for that. We were just talking about college and how
Yeah.
important it is and how we actually have some pathways to get, our students from 12th grade to college and possibly earning a very decent amount of money so that they can survive in this world and economy right now. So
Right.
let's don't get started. Um, Tell us who you are. Where are you from? People might not even be familiar with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I grew up in a small town in West Tennessee called Jackson, and that's actually where my fiance grew up as well. And so I have been in Atlanta since 2008. I went to Howard for undergraduate and spent a number of years in DC, and that's where I started my nonprofit to help students pay for college. But my parents, my grandparents, they're all very much involved in education. Most of my aunts and uncles have taught at some point along their journey, and so we're a family who believes that education can level the playing field for students, and their right to education can create so many opportunities. And that's just kind of how I was raised, with other people sitting around my kitchen table getting additional help and support from my family, and just passing that tradition on. I think that the education of our students is absolutely a community affair, a lot because of that upbringing. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to start my nonprofit right out of college. I had over $200,000 in scholarships, and have really been on this mission to make sure that students know that they can go to college and they can do it without going into debt. And so now we are a team of 20, and we just opened up a college access hub in Midtown Atlanta. So any student from any school around the city can come. All they have to do is make an appointment and tell us what they need help with, and we're going to put them on the right pathway. And so that's the work that I do. From a family background, recently engaged, so navigating that. I will be a bonus mom of two boys, and so just really have a very unique perspective on what it means from all angles to make sure that our students are surrounded with the support, with the resources, and with the access that they need to be great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate and congrats on getting married, baby. That's a big old leap right there. Oh
Yes,
my
ma'am.
that is something. Um, but I know you'll do great and you'll be a great bonus mom. And I'm just saying that I know I have bonus myself and they're not bonus, they mine. So
Hmm.
I know exactly and you will be able to advocate for them,
Right.
as students in school. So tell us, I know that you were appointed
Uh-huh.
to the board, but tell us why you feel like now I'm running and I want to serve in this role?
Yeah, so I think first, I've been a partner to Atlanta Public Schools since I first moved to the city, and I was just doing free workshops or whoever would let me come in and talk about free money for college. I was showing up at all the school college fairs. I did all the things, and so just really, what inspired me as an external partner was how many counselors, how many college advisors really wanted to provide more for their students, and that really was something that I didn't see in other districts around the country. And so I was like, the people want our students to be successful. And so I really leaned into that. I had an opportunity to serve on the APS Equity Advisory Board from the very beginning of that process. And so was part of the team of people, of community leaders who helped to really name how our district was being inequitable, and not just name it, but to bullet point and say, these are the specific areas that we could do better as a district. And so then to see that work turn into the Center for Equity and Social Justice, for me as a community leader, was like, okay, APS wants to really honor their commitment in that space. And so when the appointment opportunity came up, I thought about the work I've done in my nonprofit. I thought about the other boards that I've had an opportunity to serve on. And then I just thought about the opportunities I've had to see best practices in school districts, not just here, but around the country. And even I traveled to India and saw a school on a bus and how they were able to do individualized learning models on a gutted out school bus. And so I know what this district is capable of. And so I just said, let me raise my hand and really think about ways that my thought leadership, my agency, my knowledge of governance, my knowledge of the process could really add value to this moment in the district. And so when Jason Estevez's seat became available, there was a rigorous appointments process, and got down to the final four, and was going through engagement around the same time. So I really had to say, is this the right time for me to lead in this specific way? And I heard from so many people in the community during that time period, and so the answer was yes. And so I'm committed to using the next 4 years to really see what are the ways that we can increase the reading and the literacy rates for our students. What are the ways that we can really make sure our schools have the budgets that they need to be successful? What are the ways that we can unapologetically address the equity gaps that we have clearly named in our policies, and really put that into practice? And so, I have a 4-year vision of like what I see my contribution being to this work. I want to be able to look back and say, wow, this school is different because of the decisions and the resources that we allocated in that direction. This community is better because we made some really good decisions. And I don't take it lightly that some of the decisions that we're making today could affect communities for the next decade. So we have to get it right. We have to get it right.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you putting your name in here, because just trying,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that speak volumes. And running and winning, or running, even if you don't win, you put your hat into, and I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying, because I ran before I did, I understand. Like,
Yeah.
the work still continue. It still keep going. And so I really appreciate you just putting your name in the hat to run, because this, I know people think it's easy, y'all. It ain't easy at all. It's not. Um, name some of the barriers that you've seen in the community or around the city, because seat 9 is a district ride, right?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I'm transitioning
Okay.
to the car. Give
No,
me.
you good. You absolutely good. So name some of the barriers that you're seeing right now and just throughout the city.
So there's a number of things, right? First, we live already in the most inequitable city in the country. And so we can't
Mhm.
ignore that and ignore the impact that decades of poverty and illiteracy and unemployment rates and the impact that
Mhm.
I think some of the biggest barriers, unfortunately, are adults who are in the way.
Okay.
We have these pocket communities that are louder than communities that might actually have greater need. And so what I would say is like we got to focus, get our conversations really back centered on students, because once we make sure that students in all parts of our town are doing well, it will bubble. We'll see higher graduation rates. We will see higher employment rates. We'll see higher
You broke up just a little bit.
be on the north side and hear what they say they're missing, and then I could be on the south side and hear similar tones but different focus, right? And so I don't think every district, every cluster needs the same thing. I think that we have to listen to the parents who know what's best for their children in that community and make sure we fully fund it, and then we sustain it and wrap it around with like the great teachers, with great administrators, and then get out the way so they can do their jobs.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think adults have been a real serious issue here in
Mhm.
Atlanta all around, with just taking care of the basic need. We want these babies to know how to read and write. We're not add and subtract. We want that. But it's been so many adults in the way where we haven't had the opportunity to really get to what we needed to get. Now let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Besides your nonprofit, what are other things that you've done prior to joining the school board to kind of help tackle those issues that you've seen?
So for a number of years, I was the chair of the Fulton County Youth Workforces Youth Council, and so that allowed me to kind of see for the students who we miss, right? The students who don't have a plan after high school, what their challenges are, to figure out what is next for them and find gainful employment. And so I was a part of the team that would make sure that we were providing the state funding for students to be trained, the WIOA funds, to make sure they got that money so they could get a certification in something in a high demand field, so that we created that opportunity. And so we served students through the age of young people through the age of 22, I'd say, to help them find a pathway. So it was kind of like a catch all on the back end for the students that we missed coming through our school pipeline. And so that really motivates me to look closely at like what's happening with the Atlanta College and Career Academy, and how can we be more intentional about creating more opportunities for students to get certifications before they leave our doors, so they're not struggling all the way up to age 22 to figure out what's next.
Thank you for that. Now let me ask you this. We have the college and career school. We have it, but not
Mhm.
many students know about it. What would you do? And I know you can't necessarily tell the superintendent what to do, but what can we do better to help get that information? Because for uh, over at early college, for example, we know them babies going to college, but
Mhm.
right next door at Carver Steam, we know that everybody may not go to college, but they have a beautiful pathway right up the sidewalk from their school. What do you think we
Mhm.
need to do to kind of help get the word out and let children know that this option is available?
So one thing I'll say is that we're leaving it up to the schools to tell students about those opportunities. And I think the district could do more about making sure that all families are aware of what those resources are. I know in some states, like students don't, they don't rely on students to find out about opportunities. If they make a certain level on the in the course test, they're automatically, an option. And then I think but I think we have to start thinking about what systems are in place so that we're not being gatekeepers of information, right? And so I think the district can do a better job of saying every student should have a newsletter, a text message, whatever our mass communication methods are, so that people know about those. But I also think that we could do a better job of like having a catch-all for students who might even be in they might not know that it's in the realm of possibility. Already connect them to it, and then educate the parents on what it is and let them make a decision after the fact.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's one option all of the high schoolers should know. And I think me and Sherelle both will agree on this. Just going back as kids transition from eighth to ninth, letting them know ahead of time, hey y'all, it's a lot of it's so many resources available in our school district alone that parents and students just aren't aware of. And I think hats off to Travis and Keisha. I always shout them out because
Yeah.
they have truly stepped up engagement just a notch better than what we've had in the past. But most definitely making sure that all of these resources are available for all. Go as far back as middle school. Let them know, hey,
Yeah.
you know you're gonna be a bulldog or astro or whatever. They need to know those resources are available to them. Thank you for that. I'm finna turn over to my lovely co-host, Miss Sherelle, to finish out the questions.
Okay.
Mistress, I'm not gonna hold you long, because I know how it is trying to drive, but you said a number of things that piqued my interest. But I have to ask you this question: when you were a student, what deficits, if any, did you notice in the education system, and how do you hope to address that your next term in the District 9 at large seat?
Okay, sure. So, so I was a student in Tennessee. I just want to make sure
Right.
I say that. But what I would say is I was, I guess I was, and I early identified as a student who might be considered for the gifted program. And they tested me in, and I didn't quote unquote pass the test, or I was in it for a year, and then the second year I didn't quote unquote pass the test, the subjective parts of the test, because of course it's biased, and
Right.
I might not have known in seventh grade the address of the White House, and those are kind of questions
Right.
they were asking me during that time frame. And my parents went all the way up to the superintendent and fought that because they saw who I was and what I was capable of. And so, as I'm here sitting in this seat, parents are telling me that their children are having trouble with the subjective part of the test. And I'm like, well, what is happening there where we are dimming the light of our brightest students? And how do we course correct that to give more students opportunity to be in that pipeline? And then on the opposite side, on the special education piece, I hear that how it's implemented, how students are diagnosed, how resources are distributed looks different across the district. And so we have to say, what's the policy that we need to put in place so that every student is treated the same along both of those pipelines? And then what do we need to change to make it more equitable so we're not missing students that are in either of those gifted buckets?
But see, you know what? I can identify with that gifted one right there. And I will say, based on who create tests, and how they are written, and who was written for. So that's
and how they perceive you, because I was just being too vocal. I was saying, where are the Black authors? Why am I not hearing? Why am I not learning about other things? So I was a problem gifted child, and that's okay.
Well, right. You got in what they call good trouble. You all right? Okay, so that's quite all right. That part I understand, and that I understand it from a parent standpoint. I've done that, but I do want to ask you, because you made mention of some of the things as relates to gifted and programs and how children are perceived in special education. And I, for one, have special education at heart. So I'm going to ask you, during the it was the world's desire not to, again, experience a global pandemic such as COVID-19. The pandemic highlighted ugly truths of the educational system, the unique needs of students, and the often overlooked challenges of teachers, the unheard voices of students, their families, and it definitely told the stories of the many unsung sheroes and heroes. Our parents and our teachers, boy, played a role that they have never played before during the pandemic. But what I want to hear from you is, what were the challenges you bear witness to, and what concrete plans would you bring to the table as a District Seat 9 at-large member to address the lingering challenges of this pandemic? I mean, because we're still in it based on the remnants of it. But what would you do differently now that you'll be running for this seat and wanting? I had people say, I don't know why you want to run. You had a taste of it, but anyway, I appreciate your willingness to bring it back home again. So, what challenge did you see, and what would you do?
So during the pandemic, there were a number of challenges that students experience. I mean, I think the social emotional is huge, and I don't know that we have even like chipped off the iceberg on that, because children were, if they were, having trouble at home, then they were in that environment on a much more consistent basis. And, we won't know fully how that impacted them probably for the next few years, if we're being honest, right? I think that I had an opportunity to work with students across in the metro area during the pandemic, and it was just a disconnect, right? You're on the screen, you may or may not be paying attention, teachers may or may not force you to turn your camera on depending on what's going on. If anybody's worked at home, how much attention you're paying throughout the day to what's happening on those screens. And so what I'll say is what I was able to do through our nonprofit was we knew that students weren't able to connect with their counselors. And so we launched parking lot FAFSA. We rented those big LED screens and made like a drive-in theater so the students could drive up and get their FAFSA done. And so it's that kind of same spirit of like, there aren't any excuses. They got to get it done. So it's our responsibility to figure it out, that I'm bringing to the next 4 years of the board. I'm like, with $1.7 billion, what do you mean we can't? That's not a real thing. So it's like, how can we? What's the innovation that needs to take place? How do we think about resources differently? Specifically around, the reading. We know what the literacy rates are for our students, and I'm ready for us to do something radical. I'm ready for us to push more money. I'm ready for us to hire literacy specialists for every school. I'm ready for us to invest the money in training and retraining all of our teachers on the phonics of reading. Like, it has to be done, and I want it to happen within the next year. And so that's what I'm looking at the budget. I'm taking extra classes at Georgetown so I can learn how to peel back all of the layers of the budget, because it can be intimidating. Even me with an understanding of federal grants, I'm like, okay, wait, what is this line item, and did they carry the one or not, right? And so I think that it is up to me to be responsible and educate myself on how we get there, and then to make sure that we have the policies in place. And I support the superintendent, and because I know that that's a goal of hers as well, our interim superintendent, that I do everything in my power to support her in being radical with a solution that we can look back on in 5 years and say we did the hard work.
I appreciate that one. Ms. Howell, I think that's the best answer I've heard on that one right there. So thank you for being innovative and willing to be creative in finding out how we can tackle such a budget. $1.7 billion sounds like a lot of money, but in actuality, it's not when it comes to education. A lot of people don't realize that, but by the time you start spending, you realize 1.7 billion doesn't go that far. But it will certainly help the children in the city of Atlanta. I think she's frozen though.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, you're back. Yes.
Okay, cool.
I was saying I think that $1.7 billion is not a lot when you're looking at it in totally, or in its totality, but it would certainly do wonders for the students in the city of Atlanta should it be put in the proper places. I'll say it that way. So
I agree.
So thank you for being innovative and looking at that and not just going along with the status quo.
Right.
What disparities do you see as being the contributing factors? And should you be re-elected, or I'm gonna say re-elected, elected to that position? What would you bring back to the table based on the disparities that you see?
So a couple of things, right? I think when we look at our neighborhood schools, our traditional schools, and we think about, some of the great city leaders that have come from those schools and how great the bands were, how great some of the course offerings were. Where one of the greatest disparities I see is in advanced course, honors course offerings across the district. And I really want to, I actually asked for an equity impact assessment to be done to identify exactly how many courses, where are they, and what does that mean for our students in their college readiness and even career readiness, because I think that even if they're on a career pipeline, having that academic rigor is important. And so I think that is one area on the back end that we've got to address. The other area on the front end is early learning. And so how the number of quality rated facilities that are available. And I know that the district is working with the city on an initiative, but we've got to accelerate that pipeline, because if we bookend it it starts with the early learning piece and then goes all the way through what they have access to towards the end, so that they are not going into remedial classes or not stopping out of college. Because what I see is 84% graduation rate, but less than 20% of them are graduating from college. So that tells me we're missing some pieces in that puzzle, and we've got to go back and course correct.
I'm glad you brought up that 84% graduation rate. And looking at the graduation rate, I noticed that since 2014 up until the present, this is the first time Atlanta Public School System has had the highest graduation rate of Black students. But yet and still we don't see it translating to the workforce or into college. And I don't think it's necessarily due to finances. I think it's due to the fact that they're not equipped enough to deal with those two environments in particularly. And I'm saying that because in 2022, the students of class of 2022 were let go based on Carnegie units, their credits, to meet the Georgia high school graduation requirements. So in order to ensure that does not happen again, how will you galvanize your colleagues in ensuring? I know we got literacy programs going, but that's based on younger students. And it seems that the older students are being left out, or they are not giving the information in order to be successful in that transitional piece. So what would you do your next time around to ensure that we don't end up with another class like the class of 2022 who spent the most time in COVID and received the least amount of support from the school system?
So when I think about my role as a board member, right, and goals 3 and 4 that we have that are dealing with like students in college and career enrollment, one of the things that I have been asking internally is, are we measuring the right things? Are we really looking at, we're getting data that students are self-reporting on how confident they feel, but there are so many other places that we could be getting information from that would make us sure that our students are on the right pipeline. And so as we're looking at our goals, I know, of course, literacy and numeracy are urgent, right? But during my next 4 years, my goal is to really push the needle on asking if we can look at measuring different factors for success. So then that's how we hold the superintendent accountable. And then that's how we set policies around measuring the right things. And so that's what I will be laser focused on.
I'm glad you said that, because I was wondering, I got two questions. But she brought me into the third one, Ms. Howe, sorry. Your goals and guardrails. And dumbing those guardrails goes down. I'm glad you said that, because measuring the right thing will help identify where the issues truly lie.
Exactly.
As opposed to reducing the goals to almost nothing when we're already at nothing.
Yeah, and so I think like that profile of a graduate, for instance, it feels a little elusive, and I'm like, okay, what are we? How
Yes,
do we know at the end of that spectrum that when that child walks across that stage, they have a plan, they have
right,
already enrolled in something, or
right.
they started. I'm a big advocate of entrepreneurship, or they are on a right pathway somehow, and I think if we narrow down our indicators, that's what I should say, more
Yes,
than
yes,
what are the key performance indicators that we can hang our hat on over the next 5 years. We don't have to recreate it, right?
right.
It all there are a lot of studies that say what students need to have. We just have to be bold enough to hold ourselves accountable to those specific things.
And look, I was trying to find my reaction button because I was going to give you a hard one on that one. So I'll high five with a virtual high five for that one too. To look. Anyway, um, but let me. I'll go here again to Miss Howard. I promise I'll be finished. Your experience in the field of I mean, you've been in so many different fields. Actually, you've been in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
Senate, Georgia Senate, and I mean, and just and then dealing with children and students, from all walks of life. But I want to ask you, should you become the District 9 at large seat, what would you do to aid the board in understanding the importance of a binding contract such as an IEP, individualized education plans for students who are protected by federal law? And how can you have ensure the students are receiving a valid IEP and related services?
So thank you for that question. And that is something that just recently I have really started to lean in more. It's in my top 5 and my top 5 priorities that I share with our interim superintendent. Because that's what I hear the most, families saying that it's taking over a year for them to I really get into the process. And I think about, the governance side of me is like, there's a lot of liability there
Yes,
for not honoring our commitment to what families and students need, and making sure that it is implemented, not just the document itself. What I'm hearing a lot is around the implementation of
right,
it after the long period of waiting to get
right,
diagnosed and getting it set up. And so what I've asked for is, what is our plan over the next year to put some policies and procedures in place that will be adopted across the district, so that we know that the right things are happening in the right time frame. I think if you have watched any of the board meetings, a lot of my questions are, what's the process and what's
yes,
the timeline,
right,
right? because
right.
because I think that people are owed that level of information. And so I'm going to be working closely with Dr. Battle, attending some of those meetings, asking the hard questions so that we can see some improvement in the processes there, but also in the timeline. And then talking to my colleagues specifically about, is there something we need to change in our policy, or is there something we need to change from a budget lens? Is it a staffing issue? Is it a training issue? Or is it a policy issue? Those are the 3 questions that I've been trying to really get to the root of. And I'm not just talking to families, I'm talking to individuals who are responsible for putting the IEPs in place. I'm talking to the superintendent. Like, I want to hear from all parties so we can come to a mutual understanding of what's necessary. And I'm using the word necessary with as much weight as I possibly can, because we owe it to the families to make that right. And we have to do it.
Well, see, Miss Howard, she brought me to another point, but I'm gonna stay true. I told you I'm gonna stay true. I'm gonna stay true. So no, because you know what, that one's near and dear to my heart.
Mhm.
Again, I'll extend my services myself to you.
Oh, yeah.
Should you like to have a conversation? I don't
Yes.
like. I don't. My job is not to talk about people, but talk about the process.
Mhm.
Because that's what's most important. It's not about the people; it's about the children that's behind the paper, and that
Right.
the representative, hopefully, of that paper. And I bring that up because the IEP is a binding contract
Mhm.
that is led by federal law.
Mhm.
But oftentimes, and if you've spoken to the people that you said, you'll hear them say that the IEP was not honored,
Mhm.
or that students they get the right evaluation, and so or related services. And so I do want to see that that we curtail some of the lawsuits that are brought against APS.
Yes.
And I think we can curtail those lawsuits based on the fact that we can get it right in the beginning. So I look forward to you sitting on the board for the next 4 years and helping parents and students, communities, and the city and the state get it right. Because it's going to be extremely important. And the reason why I say that is because Black students are 2 times as likely to be subject to school-related arrest compared to their white counterparts, as studied by the American Bar Association. So I'm looking at how do we propose to fight that and to fight truancy, the equitable part of truancy. How do we fight absenteeism and the equitable part of absenteeism? But the more importantly is having an educational plan for all students. But my belief also is that each school should have an individual education plan. While we know that we're operating up on the umbrella of the state, we know that each school, based on the community it sits in, has unique needs. So I look forward to you bringing your skill set to the table. And I like the fact that you're standing up for children and you making it about them. So I appreciate you being here and having a conversation with the community through this platform. And I look forward to coming to the board meeting and seeing you sit in that seat.
Well, I look forward to it as well, but it's not just my seat. I really see myself as an advocate for everybody that is that has a vested interest in the district. And so please know that it's my goal to hear from as many people as possible, because I want to make sure that we're doing the right things over the next 4 to 5 years, so that our student outcomes are higher, our staff is empowered,
right.
and we have the right leadership in place to really make sure that all schools are high quality learning facilities. And I do think it's a community effort.
I think we can get there in the city of Atlanta. But but the points that you make, you're absolutely correct. We have got to start being honest with ourselves and saying what we want. Be intentional about what we're looking for, and not be afraid, because I think that Atlanta could be that model city. But we have got to be willing to put the work into it and choose a leader that is going to be specifically for students without apology. We got to have a board who's gonna hold the superintendent accountable for what he or she does for the students in the city of Atlanta, because ultimately we're going to produce those students and put them in that pipeline, as you referenced, to be citizens in the city of Atlanta. So that's what we're looking for. So I really do appreciate you sitting on the board currently. And I know that that seat was a little hot when you came in, but you have done well. So don't worry. I think you're holding it down.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all for just creating this space for me to share a little bit more. I know in a lot of times in the typical debate forum, you gotta hit the bullet points and move out. So this really has been a great experience, and hopefully you got to know me a little bit better and some of the things that I'm really passionate about, and just want to keep those communication lines open.
Well, I appreciate you. Look, so you can have my phone number, but then again, you can see me though. But Ms. Howell, we're gonna let you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say this. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to share this, Miss Sherelle, because I know you wasn't in this space. Jessica was one of the candidates who said in another space, listen, I recognize I have some donations from some unfamiliar places, and I'm going to send that back because that's not what the people in this city necessarily stand for. And so I just want to make sure that's lifted up, because we pay attention. We don't just vote. We pay attention to the detail, because we know where it's at. It's in the detail. And so I really appreciate you saying that, even though the room was filled, but some of us went in there, but you let it be known, listen, I'm not here to flim flam and bamboozle. You know, if this
Yeah.
not right, don't sit well with the community, it don't need to be around me. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being here today. This was a really good conversation, and I know we got a lot more out of you. Tell us how we can get in touch with you, support your campaign, and when is early voting again?
So early voting starts October 16th. It is coming fast. So definitely want to make sure that people know, because of course the school board is going to be the only thing on the ballot this November. So we want to make sure we get people out to vote, vote now, so you don't have to sit and complain later. Let's vote the right people in and keep them in and support them. I think this is hard work, and I want to make sure I lift that up. This is, if you're doing it right, it really is what I call an awesome responsibility. And I weigh both of those words equally, right? It is awesome to see movement, but it is also a huge responsibility. And so just knowing that having the support of the community is really important. Making sure that even holding me accountable, right? And making sure that I have all of the information when I'm sitting up on that diet, so I can make the best decision for our children. I really depend on people for that. So I'm not just looking at PowerPoints. I'm having the conversations around the whole circle. So you can count on me for that. My website is jessicajohnson4aps.com. If you want to reach out, I will be canvassing every Saturday up until November 7th. So I would welcome people to come out and help me knock on some doors. I don't have a huge campaign budget. I'm just doing the work and getting as many people involved in the work as possible. Phone banking, the whole shebang. Just really would appreciate the help. And then know that once November 7th passed, welcome the conversations. I genuinely feel.
Well, thank you so much for that. Y'all heard it. If you're watching the replay, go check her out, donate, support, share. Like she said, go knock on doors. Education in Atlanta is very important. We care about our babies, and we care about our candidates, and I know they appreciate us holding them accountable. So thank you so much for hopping on today with this conversation. I know you'll do very well. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.
We most certainly
All right,
do.
thank you.
We most certainly do. You be safe and